on terrorism is fabricated. It is a complete fabrication. But at the same time, it is the doctrine which justifies all these actions, both internally and internationally. The police state inside, the militarization of the Middle East and Central Asia. On the other hand, it's part of the national security doctrine. It is a big lie. And it's perhaps the biggest lie in US history. And it is absolutely essential that a consistent anti-war movement reveal the lie. We can't simply go around saying, and that's why I say the war and 9/11 have a relationship, because 9/11 is the basis which justifies the war on terrorism and this war of conquest. And you might find people, even among progressive organizations in Canada, who say, well, you know, I think I'm against the war in Iraq, but I think we should go after this guy, Osama bin Laden, okay? We have to weed out the terrorists. I think that's I support Bush on the terrorist thing, but I don't think we should invade Iraq, etc., etc. And bear in mind that throughout the propaganda campaign was to try to establish links between terrorists and their sponsors, namely the Iraqi authorities. And so that you had a very consistent propaganda campaign which was there day after day telling us that America is under threat and so on and so forth. And in the last speech of Bush in the General Assembly and his previous speech that he made a few weeks ago, he is now using a new term which is called the civilized world. Okay, we in the civilized world. So this, I think, is essential that we build this understanding, that it be part of a consistent anti-war movement. An anti-war movement cannot be based solely on anti-war rallies. We have to consistently create an organizational structure, a network of which spreads across the land, of grassroots, educate our fellow citizens, spread the word, establish committees at the local level, perhaps a far less dramatic way of building an anti-war movement. And because what happens with these big rallies, they take place and then subsequently people go home, feel good that they've done something, but we need the organizational structures. We have to question the legitimacy of the main political and military actors behind this war project.
How do you see in the next 5 years and onwards that competition developing? I mean, who will ultimately win out, do you think, from your experience?
This is a difficult question. The United States has a superior military power in relation to any other rival, with very sophisticated weaponry, some of which are not really even known to the public. We're talking about secret weapons programs, climatic, environmental warfare, the HARP program, new generation of nuclear weapons, Star Wars. In fact, I should say that Iraq was the first Star Wars because 60% of the missiles were sent using the GPS, the Global Positioning System, by satellite. Okay, they were launched from aircraft, they were launched from various locations, but they were teleguided by the satellites. So we're dealing with a tremendous advance of the United States in relation to any one of the other powers in the world today. So I think that's the first issue. The second is that the Anglo-American oil companies, in the wake of this war, whether we like it or not, they have established their control over 11% of the world's oil reserves, and they also, more or less, they have control over 36%, because that includes Saudi Arabia, and then if you add the Emirates to that, it's even more. But the issue is the following now: that oil is administered by the CPA, the Coalition Provisional Authority. Okay, it is not being privatized, and I think it's not being privatized for very precise reasons, because the U.S. military wants to maintain control over those oil resources, and they can then hand it out to whoever they want. But they are still maintaining the control over Iraqi's oil wealth, and they have an upper edge in relation to the other competing global powers in the world today.
Could you comment on what you think Saddam Hussein's role in all of this?
Well, first of all, Saddam Hussein was initially installed by the United States. Going back to the early periods, he was very much supported by the U.S. The so-called weapons of mass destruction were delivered by U.S. and German corporations. We've documented that in our magazine. He received U.S. military aid in the context of the Iran-Iraq War, which preceded the first Gulf War. The links between Saddam Hussein and 9/11, there are no links. I mean, the media, the U.S. media, have attempted to create the illusion that Osama bin Laden is working with Saddam and Saddam is protecting bin Laden, etc., etc. There's absolutely no foundation to those statements. On the contrary, there's a lot of evidence, as I've suggested here, that the links are between Osama and the Bush administration. Okay, if there are links, documented links, we have links between Colin Powell and Al-Qaeda, very precise links. Okay, I can get into that. We have links between the Bush family and the bin Laden family, their financial business ties. We have links between Thomas Keane, the head of the 9/11 Commission, and Osama bin Laden, because Thomas Keane, who's former governor of New Jersey and who heads the 9/11 Commission, who's responsible for shedding light on Al-Qaeda, happens to be a former business partner of the brother-in-law of Osama bin Laden. Okay? And I can go on and on and on, okay, of the links between members of the Bush administration and the bin Ladens and so on and so forth, both in the realm of financial relations, but also in the arena of these covert CIA operations. So the links between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda have been fabricated. And ironically, they're fabricated by the same people who actually use Al-Qaeda as an intelligence asset.
There's only one Israeli who was killed. I think there was a messaging service in Israel called Boingo, where two people were reported to be warned 2 hours prior to the attack. There's I think Victor Petrosky, who was formerly in the Israeli intelligence Mossad, and he said that they have a history of getting people to attack their enemies by means of deception, which was done in Libya when Reagan was induced to attack Libya after information was planted by the Mossad. I mean, is this another angle that you taken any...
Well, that report that you're referring to, this messaging service, is correct. That there were email messages which confirmed that the attacks would take place several hours before the attacks took place, and that's on record. But there are many other indications. There's the inside trading on airline stocks, which took place on the 8th, 9th, 10th of September, and where financial institutions made billions of dollars in short selling, what we call short selling the stock